All right, sweet. Let me give a sync. Welcome to the Monkey Dance Podcast. This is Ohan, and today I'm sitting here with Ola.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm Ola Ali. Short for the English version is Ola Ali.
Right on. Do you want to tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I am a PhD student. I'm wrapping up my PhD in complex systems broadly. My background is in physics and physics of complex systems. So most of my background is like training, I would say, is in physics. And that's where I get most of my training from. And then I was into complex systems towards the end of my bachelor's. So I did a master's in physics of complex systems, and I thought that was wonderful. And I was really interested in social complex systems. And so broadly speaking, social complex systems is it's a field of emergence where you're trying to understand why, using simple set of rules, you're starting to have a collective behavior, whatever that is. And I really got into it during the last year of my PhD. No, not PhD. I'm doing that now. During the last year of my bachelor's, through like classic physics stuff, and then I was like, wow, that's very cool. So I went deep into it, and I got very lucky. I met the right people during my master's, and they were like, you should do this more, and that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So what topic did you do discover in the master's that you were like, okay, I need to do this in my PhD?
Oh, I don't have a very linear path towards anything. So during my master's, I was like, I really just want to know everything about complex systems. So there, I was really interested in like the brain and biology and how like neural networks form. That was one of my favorite topics. Oh, and then I was also interested in like finance, or not really finance, but more like the economic aspect of it, and like stock markets and that. So that's actually what I did for my master's. I studied the stock market, and I was like, wow, bro. And
Nice, from physicist to finance pro.
Yeah. I was like, wow, really knew a lot of stuff there. And then I was like, I'm not sure I want to dedicate my life to that anymore. but I got to learn a lot of cool stuff, and my supervisor was amazing. And then I really was into also social complex systems, and then that's when I locked in. I was like, I should really do that. And I think economics, or the econophysics, was an applied social system as well. So that's I got into that. In fact, actually, I remember one of my master's professors. He was like, if you like a lot of things and you think that you could do a better job than those that are doing it, congrats, you're a physicist. And I was like, cool.
Wow, accurate.
I was like, you need to be dumb and at the same time arrogant enough to think you could do a better job. And then you get into it, and then you're deep into it, and then you're like, oh my God.
The physics encroachment is real. It's a real thing.
It was like the curiosity and the desire to do better. That's what you should keep from whatever you study. And then I was like, got it. So yeah, and then he told me to go to the Complexity Science Hub, which is where I'm doing my PhD now. And
you submitted.
Yeah, I submitted.
You're like you're almost done.
Almost.
Amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, it was that was a really, really very enjoyable ride. Like, I really enjoyed my PhD. I went to it thinking I just want to do complex systems. I was not very specific about anything, and I got really lucky. I started. I work on human migration, or human mobility, generally speaking, and and I got to do things I never expected to do. So my work is really application heavy. So at the very beginning of my PhD, I was told that this is going to be like a collaboration between the hub and the Ministry of Interior here in Austria, which meant that I get to speak to people who know a lot on the ground, understand like the background of it, not necessarily the science, but how it's practiced on the ground. and it gives you like it pulls you out of whatever rabbit hole you want to do, and because at the end of the day, it's something that affects human lives. So it doesn't matter how good you think you are. People have been doing this before you started. So yeah, so it was a like I think a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I was really lucky.
So the Ministry of Interior's role, is it primarily data management, or do you have a back and forth between your work and, say, policy?
It was at the beginning data management, like they provided access, and then we had workshops. We talked. We showed them our results. We discussed, and they gave us their understanding of how things go. And then we were like, "But this is our understanding of how things go." So it's more of a dialogue, really, and professional like relationship, I would say.
Cool.
So yeah, so because of that, really the focus from the very, very beginning was like, we need to do something that is applicable, like on the ground, like people want, which is a very good limitation, I would say, when you're starting a project, because it sets like the boundaries of what you can do. So my thesis has like two cores. I like to think. The first one is related to forecasting migrants and migration, and the second one is related to measuring integration. So the first part, which is like forecasting, is basically, so we answered the first very naive question, which is like, we know how many people exist in a country A, and we want to know how many people are going to arrive in the same country in the future. Because if you know how many people are going to arrive, you can plan better. If you know where they will reside, or eventually where the first point of entry is going to be, you can build a better infrastructure. You could forecast in the future. So it was a really like important, applicable question. And of course, there were other models before, but what we had that other models didn't have is that we had such high granular data. So we could assume naive stuff and go test them right away. So that was the back and forth. So the first so for this we really borrowed heavily from sociologists and like network scientists. So which was like, okay, so migration is something that like a lot of people experience. I migrated myself like twice. So I'm like it's not like you are gonna go think things are like out of nowhere. There's usually constraints. So so the first idea was like, okay, so you usually rely heavily on your social capital, whether that be your professional network, your family network, or broadly speaking, a diaspora, or anything that is sort of close enough that you can call your own, like your own family or something like that. So that's the first model. It was called the diaspora model for human migration, where we basically said the pre-existing population size. So I'm Egyptian. My diaspora would be the Egyptian diaspora. Why did we use nationality? Because it's a label that is easy enough to quantify. It's nationality. Nationality can dictate a lot of things. Usually you can infer from it language. You can infer from it policies, like what policies are imposed on what. And then it could even say like what would be your average income with respect to another person. So it's a useful label, and it's not too invasive. So for that we used nationality, we were lucky because we had it as well. And then we use that so the pre-existing population size was the Egyptian diaspora. Me and you arrival as an Egyptian. Let's see how the trend follows. And we saw that the diaspora size really was a very good predictor of how many people were going to arrive and where they will redistribute themselves in, for example, Austria. So for Austria, we had granular data, so we tested the things on very, very granularly. And then we went to the US, like we had census data, and then we tested it there. And it worked very good. Like diaspora size was very good predictor. And we used it to try to compare it with another existing model called the gravity model. And gravity model, simply speaking, is more people will attract more people. So very naive, or not naive, but like it's the idea of gravity or gravitation. More mass attracts is attracted to more mass. So we just say, okay, you're attracted to people of your own kind, because whatever worked for them is going to probably work for you. So it's like inertia, basically. You're not, unless a war or a conflict or something really, policy change, something really happens, things are going to continue as they used to. So that's the idea of the diaspora model.
So the diaspora model is a gravity model plus the condition of a nationality.
Yeah. It's you're gravitating towards people of your same nationality. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so when you say granularity, it's also at the zip code level, like municipality level?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
That was only for the case of Austria. For the US, it was metro area.
Metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because the Ministry of Interior would need to give you like zip code data, I guess. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And so when you say testing, can you go over some of the details of what testing entails at this point?
Oh, so let's say we have the assumption that you go where people like you go. So I get like the map of the country. I divide it into like administrative sections, and I check what is the weight of every municipality, and then I see, are you going towards this municipality? Like, is a collection of people redistributing themselves on the map as much as the pre-existing population size is saying. So I'm just comparing what I think is going to happen with what already happened, and I could check the error. So I think 5 people would go there, but if it's like 20, then I'm so wrong. But if it's like 7, then I'm closer to reality. So I calculate like how much different I assumed versus what like my assumption was versus what happened. And I check the squared error basically, and then I sum it up and I check how far off I was.
Yeah, right on. Mm-hmm. And so with forecasting the trends of movement of people, do you have to account for, say, like the diplomatic relationship between Austria and Egypt? That doesn't really matter.
That's the beauty of it.
Okay.
Is that usually if the relationship, for example, is bad, you won't find many Egyptians around.
I see.
And therefore it will be accounted in the pull rate.
That makes sense. Yeah. So the fact that there aren't many Egyptians means they won't be able to come, aside from the fact that they won't want to come.
Yeah, it doesn't tell you why, but it says you're probably not going to come.
Yeah, okay, fair. Yep. So aside from the forecasting aspect of your work, you have, I don't even know how to phrase it, like a quality of life aspect almost, or like the legal journey of migration as a part of your work.
Yeah.
And I guess I think about that as quality of life, but I don't know if that directly maps. But you look at a range of different factors of both the legal journey of a migrant, but then also the different outcomes they can expect once they're in the country. So can you go a bit more into detail about those? Yeah.
So that was the second core, which is integration. I'm gonna go a little bit cool. I'm gonna give you a little bit of story before I go into
perfect.
That. So when we were doing the first project, the diaspora project, there was a data error. We were overcounting a lot of people. We didn't know why. We spot that error a bit in the middle, and I panicked. More people were called. And then I was like, what? Why is that dot so incredibly high? And then it turned out it was the Syrian population that we were overcounting. And the reason for that was we didn't distinguish between regular counts and internal movements, like you just arrived versus you moved around. And because they had so much internal movements, they were way over what was reality. Like we overestimated the numbers of people because we said every move is a person, like the person who did this calculation. And then I was like, oh no. So I was like, why are they moving so much? And that's when we really zoomed into like the cross section of like, okay, so Syrians usually arrived after the 2015, so there was like a war, and they most likely refugees. Can I spot that? The answer was yes, I can see people's legal status. And that was sort of the motivation behind why I'm looking into refugees and why I'm looking into legal status specifically, as a sort of like a label that is very, 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 very important. So that was the sort of the backstory.
Can you give the varieties of legal status?
Yeah. So in Austria, there is around 11 legal statuses. Foreigner with a residence permit, that's me and probably you. We enter the country, for a purpose, we get the residence permit, and that usually is for work, study, something else, and it's for a defined period of time, and it's a general label for labor migrants. I call those like stable statuses. And then there is the another one, which is I'm in the process of obtaining something within the country, and that I call and that I call a transitionary like status. And in that work, in that label is like someone who's seeking asylum, someone who is approved asylum seeker, someone who's going through a process. The label is inherently transitionary. It doesn't really give you lots of rights. You don't really have freedom, as much freedom as others. And it will expire, and you don't want to be in it, just by definition. So that's like a transitionary. And then there's another sort of stable, which is like if I'm entitled to being a refugee, if I entered the asylum process, crossed all the transitionary states, and now I'm entitled to asylum, this is a stable state because it gives you right, you can work, you can move, all of that. So that's also stable. And then after that, if I'm on my way of leaving, if I left the country, or if I'm a tolerated foreigner, or if I have a status that says basically I'm on my way out, that's an exit-related status, and there are a few of those. So broadly speaking, I categorize them into four: entry status, stable status, transitionary status, and exit. So you want to enter, get stable, and then exit. An exit could mean death as well. So you leave, you will for sure leave eventually.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that was sort of like the spectrum that we had, and then we were very curious into how people move around them because, as I said, people had different movement behaviors in the country, and that could be traced down to their labels, even their stable labels. So a stable label could again mean foreigner with residence permit. That's me, entitled to asylum, entitled to subsidiary protection, or displaced person. That is according to the analysis. I made that up. A displaced person is the status that most displaced Ukrainian end up getting. Subsidiary protection is something that most Afghanis in Austria end up getting. And entitled to refugee is something that most Syrians end up getting. So, I mean, those are not like strict rules, but that's what the last 2 years patterns were. So we checked different populations. We were like, okay, we will treat the legal system as a game. You enter, you play, as in you have different statuses. You will you will either sort yourself or the system will sort you. So you move through it, and then you move through each node, and then I will just see you entered and then you left. But I will check your path, and it was almost predominantly defined by your nationality, what is going to happen. Not only did your nationality sort of predict which node or which label you ended up getting, it also heavily influenced how long it will take that journey. So I think, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think Syrians and Afghanis took long. Afghani took the longest, I think.
I looked at it today.
Yeah.
So Ukrainians were 2 months.
Yeah.
Syrians were 9 months. Afghanis were 20 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was. Yeah. I was like, oh my god, that's a lot. And then I thought that's for sure it was wrong. So I redid it, and then I changed all of the parameters, and then I sent it to refugee, and they were like, that's very little. We wait way longer than this. And I was like, okay, that makes sense.
And so did you find that those averages carried across the particular label, or was it purely ethnicity based or nationality based regardless of the label they carried?
I think it's. So the thing is, you always have to revisit the law here. So entitled to asylum is by far the one that gives you the most rights.
Okay.
And subsidiary protection is when you cannot get entitled to asylum, but you still, there's like sort of, I mean, I have to visit the actual text, but as much as I remember, it was something like if you cannot get the entitled to asylum, but there is a well-founded fear if you go back, then you'll end up with subsidiary protection. And displaced is a special status that was triggered recently, like in 2022.
For Ukrainians.
For Ukrainians, especially. So the label is sort of associated with the nationality, and the nationality sort of like the situation in Syria is different than the situation in Afghanistan. So therefore, the label that they will get is different. So I cannot really say.
Yeah, that's fair. And what does displaced person get you? Like, is it just a temporary protection?
It is a temporary protection status, yeah.
And so, but all three of these are, right? None of them necessarily carry a path to citizenship, but they might? Or permanent residency?
They might, yeah.
They might.
There's like so if you, I'm sure someone can correct me on this one. So through the displaced person status, you can enter the country, you can work right away, and then if you have a stable job, I think you can transition to residence permit with through labor, and through that you're a labor migrant, and then you can get you can integrate through the labor migrant situation. And I think you can still get citizenship through all the paths if you sort of like play the system a bit. But I actually have not worked with like lawyers or individuals, so I don't know what. I just know that it is possible.
No, that's fair. And when you look at their paths to legal status, is permanent residency something that you include in the model to see how often they achieve that, or is that just not relevant for the type of analysis you're doing?
I cannot differentiate between a permanent residence and just a residence. So
I see. Okay.
I can only see if you change
to citizenship or something.
No, if you change the citizenship, that would make you an Austrian, so you exit the system. You're no longer a migrant.
I see. Yes.
But it's very little. Naturalization in Austria is quite low.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like the last 2 years it was like 1%, something like that. So it's very little.
Right. So so exiting the system for the most part is exiting the country as well?
Yeah, because death is very negligible in a 2-year observation.
Right.
And naturalization would also be very negligible in a 2-year observation.
Cool. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And so you have, you had metrics like recognition pace, which is kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And
how long it takes you to reach stability.
To reach stability, right. I see. Okay, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And there seems to be almost, a hierarchy of privilege there that we're kind of, circling around in terms of nationality.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's not just, let's say, the different types of conflict, but that there's a prioritization of certain nationalities, it seems.
Yeah. So this project is being reviewed, and I was very lucky that the reviewers that like reviewed my work, they were law scholars, ethnographic scholars. They were people who were very knowledgeable in this. And one of them was like, you really have to be very clear about the different definitions, whether entitled to asylum, subsidiary, or displaced. And you have to understand that all of them give completely different rights. And there is a separate discussion as to why these labels are triggered for certain people, but we can argue about this all day, and it's in the law. It's because each state has sovereignty. It's not up for us to tell a country what to do, but you just need to know that you have to be very, very conscious that different labels will give you different rights. Why did we trigger one for one and not the other? That's a very separate discussion.
I see.
Yeah.
So I, as an outsider, can look at the data and say, well, there's clearly a racial issue here. But as somebody who's looking at the data, there could be multiple reasons why somebody could defend the fact that there's almost a hierarchy of status here.
Yeah.
Right.
There are definitely statuses that are better than others in the legal system.
Right. And some nationalities that obtain some over the others.
Yeah. Yep. That's what we show, is that certain nationalities end up with other certain statuses predominantly.
Right. And you also found gender disparity there.
Yeah. So that was interesting because so what we saw is that you can test for everything. You can test for age groups. You can test for gender, or those are the two things that we had. We could not really test for education or employment or all of this because we do not have access to that. But we had gender, so we just stratified things based on like gender. So if you just look at male versus female, you get nothing. It's too blurry from above. A male and a female in the data behaves similarly. They integrate the same and they exit almost identical. It's only when you look at both male from Syria or male from Afghanistan versus a female from Afghanistan that you start seeing the difference. It's as if so nationality gives you the clearest distinction. Nationality plus gender give you the most clear distinction. So we noticed that, for example, from countries that have conflict going on, Afghanistan and Syria, females had a slight advantage, which was already documented before. They reached stability faster with slightly higher rates. And for Ukraine, it was almost negligible, but the females were not the advantageous ones. And that is, in the paper, I say that it's because it's really who has to come first and bear the burden of proving themselves to the state. So usually from Syria and Afghanistan, the males come first. They prove themselves and blah, blah, blah. And then the families come through family reunification. So I come to an application that has been processed. The husband or the father has probably been approved, so my journey is much easier. The other way around was for Ukrainian because the males were and cannot travel. So They usually are the kids, so the mother has probably done most of the work. So it's not that the system really, at least from my analysis, the system did not seem to prefer a gender versus the other. It was just who traditionally arrives first.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, with determinations of legal status, you also have how it shapes where you can live, whether you can work. And is that right? And I guess my question is more about, in your analysis, do you look at almost like the ability to engage and integrate with a country once you migrate?
I'm not sure if I did all of that, to be honest. So I did study integration, and not through. I studied all of them separately. I cannot merge them all together just now. So what I did is that I looked into their movement or housing relocation. That was a project where I looked into how many people switched their residential home in 1 year. And there was a lot of disparities. The Syrians were the most disadvantaged in that time frame / study, followed by Afghanis, followed by Syrians. Here we wanted to really show that the refugees have a harder time integrating by the virtue of them being refugees. We cannot understand causes. We know it's a symptom, and we cannot really infer much beyond that. And then when that really came to be, like when we really started seeing that people are, so why is it bad that you move your house 5 times a year? If you move once or twice, it's good. You're looking for a better home. You're closer to your friends, all of that. But if you're moving 5 or more times a year, it's probably that you cannot afford to stay in the same place, and that uprooting is sort of it's very violent, especially if you have kids and all of that. So more moves is bad. You don't want to relocate so much in 1 year. And then when we looked at it, it was by nationality. But then when you look even further, you're like, oh, nationality means has different legal statuses, and that was the natural route of how we got there. Also, fun fact: if you're going through the asylum process, you usually cannot switch. Like you're in the basic care facilities, you're not free to move. Versus if you're a displaced person, you have the freedom of movement, which is why your first location is you choose it. So if you're a refugee or entitled to subsidiary protection, before you end up with those, if you're still going through the process, you probably have to stay in a facility, and you do not, you can be made to switch your location depending on if the facility can accommodate you or not. So you could probably move twice or 3 times not willingly. So that's why you're more likely to move. And when it comes to labor market, this was a special project. Actually, I was very lucky to work with a transforming economies group with Lubica, and she had, that was the most policy driven work that I did. So all of this that I did would make an outsider believe, oh, a displaced person status is the best. I want that one. No, it's really bad. You don't want any of those. Usually you don't want to be a migrant, but if you are, you want to be a labor migrant. So displaced person status is what most Ukrainians have. What we notice is that they're not really integrating into the labor market. They're stuck. They have the right to work. They're in the country. They have the right to move, but they're not really performing very, very well. And that's a shame, because they're highly educated. They are of working age. They're highly motivated to integrate, and it's simply they cannot be absorbed. And so this was not really like a mathy question. It was more like, we need to know what's going on. So this project, I looked into the demographics of it, like their age composition. I looked into surveys like their education composition, what skills do they bring, all of that. So a lot of people have done a lot of wonderful work. So I was sort of absorbing and trying to add the demography aspect to it. And so the conclusion of it was a feasibility study. The conclusion of it was like, they are very much willing to work, and they are very much capable of filling a gap that the country has. But what seems to be the problem is that there's like a lot of willingness, but you cannot absorb them. There's simply not just that there is no willingness, but there are a lot of barriers. So, for example, qualifications. It's a mess to get your qualifications. Like if you get it from Ukraine and you want to work in Austria, there's like a lot of other things you have to do in the middle. In one of the NGO meetings, so this project had a lot of wonderful women who they were activists. They were actively trying to integrate the Ukrainian women, and they were doing the work. They were doing better work than all of us combined. They were actually on the ground helping people. And they gave the example of like, you have doctors, you have medical doctors who want to work. You have shortage in the medical field here. So it's plain and simple. You just let them work. But I think she mentioned the example of like, it takes them 2 to 3, I think might even be 5 years to be able to work here. Who's gonna pay for that? Who's gonna pay for 5 years? No one. So what's going to happen is that you're going to have wasted skills. So that was that. So a lot of wonderful people in the project did interviews. They talked to people on the ground who were doing the integration work, who were helping people branch out. It was much easier, of course, for people who were just starting out their bachelors to join the universities and get so it's not all dark. There are lots and lots of success stories, and there are a lot of people who are doing good work. So so that project was really when you get to work on the side of the NGOs, and it was excellent experience, I would say.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean,
but all the projects are not really connected. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not like I followed the same group, went into all of their that would have been excellent, but I couldn't have done that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And can I circle back to this facilities thing? What do you mean, like public housing?
Basic care. So in Austria, there's when you enter the country, I actually had a meeting with them. They're very nice people. As your case is being like processed, you have to go somewhere. You usually cannot afford to live, and you're not free to move. So they have like houses for you. I don't want to use the word refugee camps because they're actually not refugee camps, but they are the places where people applying for asylum go to. So it's the term for it is basic care facility, and
It's like a public housing building.
it's not public housing.
I see.
It's because you cannot just willingly enter or leave. That's the thing. But it's a home provided by the state. I can look it up exactly. It's handled by a separate entity than the ministry.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I met some people there like who handled it. They explained to me the situation. They were like, so this is like publicly funded, and it's usually like big, huge buildings that are repurposed to host people, and you don't get the same number of people every year. So you have to either expand or shrink, depending on how many people arrive. So they're not fixed, and they cannot be fixed because they if you don't need it, it's better used elsewhere, and if you need more, you better get some more space. So that's that. And so, yeah, I don't remember how many locations exist in the country, but I think, but they change. So, yeah, we don't have an exact number. But I think they're some around Vienna, Upper or Lower Austria.
Yeah, well, so your status determines whether or not you have sort of housing mobility. Some people are able to sort of come in directly and then find their own housing.
Yeah.
Which also, makes a huge difference.
It saves you so many first moves, because you can decide to like go if you have all friends, you can go there. So it facilitates entering a foreign country.
And one of the things that you talked about in one of the papers was the opacity of the decision process, and I guess we kind of touched upon that already. But I guess that's difficult to tease apart, right? Like that. I guess that's something that you find by uncovering the data, seeing the trends in the data, and then not necessarily understanding why some of the trends might be emerging.
Yeah.
I guess because of the variables that you're putting in aren't necessarily predicting, clear reasons as to why some people have very different processes, legal processes, right, in their transition.
Yeah. Well, overall, I would say that you think you have lots of options. You think that the space is too big and there are so many things that cannot be unpredictable. But across like forecasting and integration, what I ended up seeing is that it's much more predictable than I initially thought. We are much more confined we're not free particles floating across space. We have networks like anchoring us. We have policies dictating everything. If you think if the social codes are not grounding you, there are laws that will for sure ground you. So we don't move as randomly as I expected.
Right. The social and material structures sort of create our social reality. Yeah. Right on. Marx is cheering it on. And so what is so this is like one or two projects that we discussed so far.
Yeah.
So are there any other specific projects in the thesis itself, or what is the major argument, or what is the scope of the thesis in terms of the argument?
There's no one argument because I was fortunate to work on many things, and there are two cores. The prediction one, we covered the diaspora one. The other one was more like, so the diaspora is more like I'm looking from up. Populations are here. I'm looking at how populations change. The other one is from like the bottom up. I'm looking at people. So this one I was very fortunate to work on like the mobility of scientists. So scientists are like cultural producers. We like to think we're as cool as musicians, and we make things and and we document them and stuff like that. The only thing that is very, very unique about scientists is that we document a lot of things. So the papers that we published are literally out there, and they are in ink, real ink and digital ink. You can trace everything and you can track it. So because I could track because I could see you could see a person through their work in time, and then through that I could just reconstruct individuals, and I could see, okay, you've worked with these people and you've worked at this institution, and then you went there, and then you went there, and then you published there, and then so
some nodal maps. Okay, right.
yeah. So it was a very, very, very cool project. It was in collaboration with the Max Planck Institute of Demography, and they had this wonderful data set. They had like all a huge collection of papers, all fields, most people, everything that's published on Scopus, almost from like 1999, 96, something around that, until like 2020. Huge chunk of information. Yeah. So I remember it was impossible to even open this data set without your computer crashing. That was impossible. And I was like, that's cool. So you have to limit yourself. You cannot, other you will drown. Otherwise you will drown. So so the first thing was like, okay, we need to look at how scientists move. The idea is that the goal was actually pre-Trump cuts, actually. We were like, these people go from somewhere to the next, and they take their knowledge with them, and they build institutions, and they're very important to how knowledge is produced and cultivated. So we want to know where scientists end up going. We're like, great. So which direction are we going to go? And then we were like, okay, so let's narrow it even further. We want to understand if scientists go where their friends go, like other scientists' friends go. We want to go where their institutions' friends go, like is. So if I'm at CSH and I collaborate with Max Planck, is my next step going to be from Austria to Hungary? To Germany. And the third one is like, I'm not going to go anywhere. Like I will just follow random. I will probably I'll follow my partner, and then we're gonna go, I don't know, somewhere else. And then the fourth one is that my friends and my institutional friends are gonna probably be the same. So I'm gonna go both directions. So that was good. Now we had 4 clear directions. They do not like overlap. Perfect. And so we followed each scientist, and that was a pain. We constructed their friends networks, so like people who they collaborated with. So you have friends, and then your friends have friends. So we were like first degree friendship, and then your second degree, and we were like, for sure, I'm not just gonna go where my friends go. They're probably gonna recommend me. And there's like a lot of like, again, we borrowing from sociologists and network scientists. There's a lot of work on the strength of weak ties, and you don't just go with your just friends, your friends of friends, and the weak ties of your friends of friends, and all of that. So we're like, okay, your friend network is gonna be your second degree like friends, and your institution network is gonna be where you work. And then we measured a little bit which direction you go, and then we modeled a little bit, and then we realized, yeah, you will most probably go where your friends are, unless your institution is very powerful. And then that's when we added the prestige. So prestigious is when you put your institutional where your institutional ranking comes to play. So you're probably, if you're like at the Harvard, the Oxfords, the Cambridge, you're gonna use that much more than if you're like from Carey University. And so where you're gonna go, the institution that you're gonna end up migrating to. And we defined this through affiliations. So if my affiliation was CSH, and then it became somewhere in Germany, so I say, okay, I moved to Germany in that period, in that window of time. So when that happened, if I want to go to an institution that is higher ranking, if I want to rise up in the institutional research ranking, I will probably use a combination of my existing institutional friends and my actual friends. So I will use my collaborators plus my institution. if I come from a very high ranking institution, I'm probably going to use that. So that's that. When I showed this to actual sociologists, they were very interested. They were like, "Oh, so there's hope." And I was like, "Yeah, talk to people, collaborate. That's your way in."
So it's that the prestige model, was that like Henrich's prestige model, or
no, we used multinomial logit models to predict to see the relative direction, and for ranking we just used the Leiden ranking, which was the research quality.
And so if the ranking is higher, you're able to transcend the limitations of your friend network. If
you want to go to higher, you better use everything you have, basically your friends and your institution.
But I see. Okay. So specifically about your mobility to higher ranking institutions?
It's in general where scientists go,
right.
But through the directions, when you add prestige to it, you realize that people will not just go network fully.
I see. So the constraint is the quality of the institution almost.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really fun.
That was a very fun project.
Yeah, very meta on your life as a scientist.
Yeah, and the cool part about like working on human mobility and migration is that it's all lived experience. Almost everyone has an opinion, which could be very painful, but I would say for the most part is very helpful because everyone has an insight because they either lived it or they know someone who lived it, and it's fun.
Yeah, I guess especially in academia because everybody moves.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and that was I think the end. That was all that I did in terms of forecasting. That's it.
I want to also touch on one other thing. You had a paper you were involved in on access to healthcare.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So this was led by a postdoc at the Hub. Her name is Elma Jarvik. She's very, very cool. And she does work mainly on healthcare, health data and health access. And in this project, this came our project sort of has like parallels. One of them is access to public resources. So you predict where how many people are coming. You know how well integrated they are. The other aspect is how much resources or public resources people are using, because that's very important for planning, understanding how the future is going to go. So one of them was healthcare. And so there are two different myths. First one is that migrants are overtaking the healthcare system. They're overusing it, and it's going to crumble. The second one is that there's something called the healthy migrant effect, which is that migrants come youngish. The majority, at least in our data, don't stay for very long. So if you have someone coming in their mid-20s, leaving before their end of 30s, they usually are not going to utilize the resources very much. And that's the healthy migrant effect. And they're both wrong. At least that's what we saw. What we saw is that, that was mostly Elma's work, is that they are they're underusing. So migrants are 20% of Austria. They use 10% of hospitalization nights, something like that. I don't have the exact statistic, but it's something around that. So factually, they're not taking more than their share. And then when you go a little bit deeper, you realize, of course, that there are differences when you look at the numbers. What is happening is that migrants are coming to hospitals less than when you match cohorts and gender and all of that. And so they're coming less, and when they come, they stay longer. So let's say I got in an accident. I have to go to the hospital. So I have to go to the hospital. It's a severe accident. I have to stay a couple of nights because they're operating on me. And then while we're at it, they discover that I have a lot of internal diseases. So they help me a little bit. So I end up staying not one night, but like 5 nights. So that is so we found that people come late and stay longer. And that the interpretation that we have for this is that, okay, people are not healthier because they still need to use healthcare. What is happening is that they're coming late. They're coming when they have to, and therefore they're staying longer. And yeah,
They don't have preventative care.
no, there's a barrier that we cannot tell from the project itself. There's a barrier to accessing. It could be that people still have healthcare ties to where they came from. For example, I never go to the dentist here. I always wait until I go home. I know my dentist. We're buddies. I trust him with my teeth. So when I come here, I don't usually go to the dentist. Sometimes there's a language barrier, sometimes there's not, depending on where you go. And yeah, so there's that. There's also different attitudes towards health. That is population, like different populations. So what we're saying is that what we can do better in the next projects is that we focus on people and we understand how long they stayed in the country, because someone who just arrived and someone who stayed 10 years are going to behave very differently. The person who stayed 10 years no longer have a favorite dentist back home. They are settled. They probably speak the language by now. So they integrate better. But that's the one thing that I think if we really had, but we didn't. If we really had, we would have sort of knew far more. But for that level, like for this work, what we showed is that there's no overutilization. There's actually a little bit underutilization. And people are sort of coming urgently. They're not coming perhaps when they should have come.
Mm-hmm. So I guess there is always the a standard finding in healthcare is that if you are not getting regular checkups, like engaging with your physician regularly, then the burden that you cause on the healthcare system when you do finally engage in the healthcare system is much greater.
Yeah.
So I guess this kind of supports that.
Yeah,
right,
maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little. Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, because there are other causes that you can't eliminate.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what else in your work should we cover?
I have to remember. I think you did a pretty good job. I think that's it. I think that's all for projects on integration, actually. And then the other two.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so what kind of ideas are you playing with next?
Oh, so I love working on migration. I love working on refugees, but I think I'm now a little ready to diversify a little bit. A very fun idea that I have. It's very, very early on. I don't have anything other than enthusiasm at the moment.
That goes far in academia.
In the right hands, I guess.
In the right hands.
Remember the project about scientists?
Mm-hmm.
I want to do something similar with artists, like musicians.
Cool.
And so I like the idea of mapping someone's career and just nerding over it, trying to understand everything that happens to it. It has also because it has to do with the fact that it is the last project, so you're sort of not over it yet. So I want to really look into that. I played a little with data on it. For example, Beyonce, amazing. Amazing career, really. I plotted it. It looks perfect. Yeah, so I'm looking really into the career trajectories of artists. I don't have really a narrow definition of an artist yet. For now, the ones that is very tractable, data's open source and all of that is musicians. So yeah, I'm just mapping their career and trying to see the influence of. I'm trying to first understand what is an institution there, and versus what is a network. Collaborators, they're very different than scientists, of course, but I've been there's a lot of work on creativity and cultural production, by Roberto Sinatra, Barabasi, many legends, and and they really put them in the same pot, and they are like, we're gonna study creativity and production and how influence happens. So I'm getting really into that. So that's sort of my next adventure, and I'm not really done with also legal statuses yet. I feel like I've just scratched the surface, but I for that one, perhaps this is a call for help. If anyone wants to work with me on this one, guys. Yeah. I feel like I just scratched the surface because it's gonna only get more complicated. Just understanding how the law works and how people navigate it, that's just like I think that's just like ground zero. There's going to be so much more happening in the future. We're going to have a lot of automation, a lot of AI getting involved, court rulings, all of this. The law, like there was a big movement about coding law and treating law as like math. That doesn't work. Spoiler alert. because a lot of it, and I think you had Lena on the podcast before, and we had a conversation about this. A lot of it is up for interpretation because you don't want to create rules just for the sake of creating rules. There's a lot of discretion involved. People don't go to the like legal institution if the problem was easy. They go when it's tough and there is nuance and there's complications. So you cannot codify this. You need a human interpretation. And so I think there's a lot of, and there will be a lot of changes coming up. Even how lawyers work now is changing. Like I'm friends with a few lawyers back in Egypt, and and they're excited, slightly scared, and weirded out by the whole AI movement. Automation was never like not on the table. There was always automation programs to code, like to make writing contracts easy. But there was always, like when you go to the big stuff like litigation and all of that, you have to have a lawyer. You need someone with who's like experienced. Not even a junior lawyer could do a lot of the things. And now you have apps that are like ChatGPT but for law, and they're changing the game a little bit. People are like, it's doing the job of a junior lawyer, and yeah, and I'm like, wow, things are changing, and yeah, and so there will be, the practice side is going to be different, the implementation side is going to be different. And I don't know how it's going to go. And then there's also the other side of like, we have laws. We usually don't respect them. Mm-hmm. But that's a different story.
Yeah, damn. And I guess it's coming at an important time because the scale of the migration problem is increasing, right? You have like 100 million more people who are displaced at the moment worldwide. I mean, you have 40 million are refugees, I think. And it's like a few million more every year. You have, violence, climate change, political instability, famine. So it's an interesting thing to think about the migration process being automated. Right. In that, yeah. For better or worse, you can see the dark side of it and you can see the positive side as well.
As I said, prediction is not that hard. It's not. It's always boils down to, is it ethical to get that invasive? Like I saw so many talks, and there was like talks about how can we predict how can we predict where the boats of refugees are gonna, when and where they're gonna land? And I was saying to one of the researchers, like, I have to stop here. More than this is unethical. The math is there. Mm-hmm. Like you can do it. It's not, you should not do a lot of things that you can do. So there's that.
But with the boats, your primary concern about the ethics is that it can be used for the wrong reasons rather than like using by the Coast Guard to help.
Yeah,
exactly right.
No, like why there's the desire to know things, and that is usually like okay, and then there's what are you gonna do with that knowledge. So I don't. sometimes you just should not unearth something if there's a chance that it's going to be bad. Like you don't want to go very accurate if you don't trust what's going to happen with that knowledge.
Yeah, there's a question in cognitive science and cognitive neuroscience quite often. Is what we're doing going to be used by marketing agencies, or the government to extract information?
And there is a lot of I love migration research so much. I think there's a lot of good people there. It's an interdisciplinary community. It's very welcoming. It spans from like Bayesian inference people to policy people. So the spectrum is huge. There are a lot of institutions that are really out to the good, and I back them up always. But I think the average person has an anxiety-driven like perspective of migration. They're always thinking that someone somewhere is under attack, and the research is saying it's not really going as catastrophic as you think it is. The more people are being immobile. That's because we can travel faster and more and all of that. We have a lot of displaced people and refugees going on, but and that's because of wars and other stuff. But some people use the climate crisis to justify. They use the climate crisis, they merge it with migration crisis, and they say we're all under a crisis. And I'm like, no, you're adding two things that are probably shouldn't be added so naively. So I think there's a lot of anxiety about it, and it is not helping anyone. It's not helping the person doing the research. It's not funding the good research. It's not helping the people who are going under something bad. It's fueling a narrative that is like just mania.
Right. So the concern is that even if people are concerned for the right reasons, for the sake of people who are migrating, it might trigger a very defensive reaction from people who don't want migration.
Yeah.
Right.
I think sometimes we focus on the very small parts and we take it out of proportion, and then that's all we're talking about. Not the whole cake. 90% of migration or 80% of migration probably is like just labor migration. That is regulated, there are policies, that is tracked, and all of that. But then we choose to focus on the things that are more anxious.
Right. And does that...
And it's not helping anyone. That's what I'm...
Right.
That's my intuition.
So, because none of the work that you do includes labor migration, right?
I think the diaspora does.
The diaspora does.
And the science of science.
Oh, the science one for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, right. But the diaspora one includes labor migration as well?
It includes all migrants. It doesn't distinguish.
Okay, cool. And but you were saying like around 80% of them are for labor, or
in Austria, I think.
Right, and country by country would be different. Yeah.
In Austria, I think refugees are like 15 to 18. I mean, I don't know the exact number because it changes. 15 to 18% of all migration, and all migrants are like less than 20% of the population.
Right.
So it's like a very small cake of a very small cake.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because I mean, you and I are in that 20% in Austria.
Yeah.
I want to touch on the music thing one more time.
Yeah.
So what are some of the variables that you're looking at with musicians?
So first of all, what defines like a piece of work? Like a paper is well defined, a research article is well defined, but then you have songs and you have remixes and you have live and you have soundtracks and you have all of that. So so at first I had to narrow it down. I think I ended up with just songs and remixes and soundtracks. There were many others.
So somebody has built this huge database.
Yeah, it's no. You could go to it right now. I mean, first of all streaming app.
Right.
You could scrape them. I mean,
right.
If you wish, and if you have an API. So Spotify, everything, and then there are open data sources. There are many. The ones I know right now is called Music Brains, and and then the data quality is not that bad at all. So you go there and then you scrape people, and then you put, you're like, okay, so this song was released in 2018, and then their last song is like 2025. So the person, this is the career 2022 to 2025 or something like that, and then you count how many things they've done. That's their production rate by hopefully clear metric. And then there comes the problem of like, so scientists have scientific fields, artists have genres, and good luck with that. Good luck with that. That is a mess. Let me know if you once you get it cleaned. That's or like, so I think like streaming apps have human annotated genres. I think I know one that has like 30. I don't even like. I bet, and these companies are like they're not just gonna be open about what they do. So I mean, you can infer it, but you have to look at it a bit, and then the thing I'm looking into is so an institution right now is what I'm concerned with. So a collaboration, I could look at like you and I make a song together. So you and I collaborate, but then there are writers and then there are producers, and that's about the extent of my knowledge. And then there are labels, and so could a label be an institution? Maybe, maybe not. And then I was reading this paper, and it was like artists who are signed to labels. That's already a major success. So let's see.
Yeah, well, that's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so if you had like an unlimited budget, access to whatever data set you could.
Yeah.
What's the first project you'd go for? What's like the dream project that you'd go for? Is it this artist project?
Yeah, a little.
Yeah. Right.
It's the fun one right now.
Yeah,
I really because it cannot all be tough. It has to some parts you just have to do for just enjoying it. I don't know. I probably am gonna talk to other people, and if I have like unlimited budget, I think there are a lot of good scientists out there, and perhaps sharing the budget is the first thing I should do.
Yeah. You build your team. It's more about the question.
No, I don't know. I would really want to. I want to study. So, back to serious projects. I think is so. I studied migration. I had like for casting, I had integration. Those are two good pieces of the puzzle. But the biggest part is redistribution. Migrants are just like if you think of like fluids, they just don't move because they want to move. There's usually like some force that is affecting something, and then the active movement itself creates like a void. So migration is essentially in my head right now. It's a redistribution problem. You have a lot of people with I'm talking here about labor mostly. A lot of people with a lot of skills who are just for the sake of our social and legal laws are just constrained. But actually, why would someone leave their home in the first place is probably because they're reaching for something. They could be just because they are looking for a better job opportunity, or it could be to achieve a dream, or just because they want to discover something. So by the act, so you move because there is something that you're looking for. There's unequal, in general, resources are unequal. There are places with so many mountains, places with no mountains. So let's assume that I am a mountain-seeking person and I don't live in a mountainous place. So that's where I will want to go. So because there's inequality, because there are other things that are not available right now, I will seek something else. And because of this, because of that intention and that movement, I will either create a void where I left, or I will add up something to where I go, or I will create a constraint, or I will where I left will be better off or worse off. So it's a redistribution problem. You're redistributing the skills, and the people and the demographics. Some places are older than other places, so it's that I think, but that's huge. Like if we just want to investigate it from the economic aspect, that's a lot of work, a lot of work. Because how do you find skills? How do you define meaningful contribution? How do you is a place if a place just simply has too many people, are you elevating a pressure or are you adding to it? So that's I think is something that I would put if I had unlimited resources. Perhaps that's what I could do next. And the roles of institutions into this also, like we're not just randomly going somewhere. It's shaped by the laws that we write and agree on, by the institutions that we create. Like the academic institution is an international institution. That's why I think scientists are sort of like privileged in the way that they can move. That there are so many other institutions that you could define and study. And what makes an institution, that's also another question. So how institutions shape and dictate and sort of engineer people and movement.
Yeah, that's great. I guess to wrap up, unless you have anything else to add, why do you do what you do? Like, why do you do the research that you do?
Oh, that's tough. I don't know. As I said, I like what I do, and if I'm giving the opportunity, I will do it. Otherwise, yeah, it's I don't know. I had a job before. That was a good one, and then I was like, I should probably do research. And who knows, maybe I changed my mind. I don't know. I think it's just curiosity, I guess. And but with I don't know. I was lucky, and I do that I get to have such a good job, and just to wake up every day and ask questions. That's pretty privileged to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right on. And also because the questions you're choosing carry a lot of weight. You know, the passion project of music is amazing.
You can be on it any day.
Yeah, but it's also the kind of the what you view as the fun project versus this more weighty project of migration.
Yeah, I because you will have for sure pissed someone off. You cannot study this and people will be like, excellent, I have no comments. but it's if no one criticizes you, then no one cares about your work. And I am not sure which one is worse.
Yeah, true. Especially if you're picking genres, that'll piss a lot of people off.
Yes. Pop.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I think we will probably end it there, but thank you so much, Ola.
Thank you so much for having me.